Hello, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Douglas Johnson, and I am a certified yoga teacher at the advanced 500-hour level. I'm an ordained minister and a musician slash kirtan artist. And today I wanted to chat with you a little bit about the mind and the mind as a tool. Before I do get into that talk, however, as always, I want to thank the community that makes these talks possible, and that is my community on Patreon. So they contribute financially monthly on a regular basis, and that allows me to offer these talks without a paywall, without any kind of restrictions, free on YouTube, which is how I want to operate. So if you feel called or inspired to join that community, please check out the links below. And you can do that for as little as $1 a month. There's nothing extra, at least not right now. This really is an opportunity for people to contribute, do some selfless service or donation, true donation, where you're not really getting anything extra. You're actually paying it forward for people who may not financially be able to access content like this. Okay, so we want to talk about the mind. I'm pretty sure I've done a talk like this in the past. I've been doing talks like this now for several years, but it doesn't matter, because every time I talk about a subject, I'm going to bring a sort of different perspective or fresh perspective to it that may resonate more with you. But the basic idea that I wanted to share with you is the mind is really a tool, the rational mind. It's a tool, and it's a wonderful tool. But any tool can be abused and misused. And so I'd say the vast majority of human beings right now are misusing the tool of their mind. And for me, this is really what spirituality is about. When a spiritual tradition or teaching or teacher are doing their job well, they are helping us to use thought and the rational mind in an appropriate way rather than an inappropriate way. And there are many, many means of doing this. There's not just one way. Some will be more effective than others. Some will be more effective for certain people and less effective for other people, and vice versa. So there's no, from my perspective, one, perfect teacher or perfect teaching or anything like that. I myself draw from many different traditions and teachings. Wherever I find something useful, I usually will pull that in and start to use that, both for myself and to share with others. So the mind is really you could say a problem-solving machine for the most part, our rational mind. It likes to find a novel situation, a problem, and then go to work on trying to solve it by rearranging different pieces of the puzzle. So different things that we find, maybe people, maybe you have a challenge and you're trying to think of who would help you with this challenge. How could you get somebody or persuade someone to help you with what you're challenged by? Or maybe it is a actual problem with devices or things that you have in your life. It doesn't involve people. It involves rearranging certain things, maybe in your house or whatever it is. Maybe you're not happy with the amount of light coming in, and you want to rearrange your house to make it so that there's more light and maybe you feel better, whatever it is. So nothing wrong with that. The mind is very useful for that kind of thing. It, in a sense, is an interface for the game, or I say game is a good word for it, the game of life. which if we have the right orientation, we're enjoying this game. So that's a really good question to ask yourself. Are you having fun yet? Are you enjoying yourself? And an answer many people will give, but I will challenge is, well, no, not yet. I just need insert whatever. So if that was your answer, then I'm going to call you out on that, because that really isn't the road that I found that actually leads to lasting peace and happiness. That's a future orientation. And in non-dual spirituality, like we explore here on this channel, there really is no future. There really is only one time, ultimately, which is now. And so the question always is, are we having fun now? Are we enjoying life now? So I get it. There can be big obstacles and challenges and things to be overcome. That's fine. And we can actually enjoy that process. That's my point. Okay, so if you're saying, well, I hit the pause button on happiness because I need a romantic partner in order to be happy, I'm going to say that that ultimately is not true. And if you go through life with that perspective, when you find that romantic partner, temporarily you might find that your ego gets quiet, but it'll be temporary. It will soon find something else to go after. So the rational mind is a problem-solving machine. Now, the interesting thing about modern life is a lot of our basic needs have been met. I'd say probably for most of human history, and perhaps even for most people alive on the planet today, because a lot of people alive on the planet don't have the resources that you and I have. If you're watching this video, I'm including you in a certain group. Okay, you have access to the internet, you have access to devices, you've got streaming, you are in a kind of elite category of human being. But interestingly, we find that many people who are not in that category, who live in poverty, are happier than we are, okay? So we tend to think, oh, well, I've got all this stuff, so that must mean I'm happier than someone who lives in a part of the world where they live in poverty. Well, your assumption would be incorrect. That's not what the evidence shows us, okay? So, again, are we happy? Are we having fun yet? It's an important question, because just because I have challenges in life, it doesn't mean I can't enjoy overcoming those challenges. In fact, I'd say maybe there's nothing more enjoyable in life. I don't want to say that outright, but just as a way of speech, that overcoming things is a very, very enjoyable part of life, overcoming challenges. So that is the perspective we want to have, that okay, life has given me these challenges and it's going to be exciting and fun and interesting to try and overcome those challenges, versus seeing that as some kind of a burden, all right? So if I'm using my mind correctly, the tool of my mind, then I'm applying it to the kind of problems that it can solve. Again, like rearranging things and trying to solve these small problems. In my experience, what it is not so good at is helping us solve happiness or solve love or solve some of these bigger things like lasting peace. This is where the spiritual traditions that I've studied always point us inward. Now, the mind can play a role in that. I'm not saying that it has no place, but it really only plays a role. It is a rather perhaps small role. So the mind can be used to point to something, but the thing it's pointing to isn't something that we can really contemplate or know through rational thought. It's something that simply is experienced. It's something that we simply know or realize, okay? So it's not something that I can talk at length about describing it to you or anything like that, because it doesn't really have any qualities of its own. It is formless, nameless, shapeless. It doesn't have a smell or a taste. It doesn't look like anything. Again, in some traditions, it's called nothingness or emptiness. So how do you describe emptiness other than in a negative way, like there's nothing there, okay? It's the absence of form, all right? So this is ultimately what this type of non-dual spirituality is really talking about that I discuss here on this channel. And in my experience, this, if we really come to understand it, it's very liberating. It brings us a lot of peace and joy. And this peace and joy are our birthright. They are simply there. And we don't have to create that. That's why the mind is like trying to create happy situations. It's trying to create peaceful situations. It's trying to rearrange things in a way that we experience peace. But my experience is that these aren't things that we need to go looking for. They are simply here within us. They are here now. And they are things that we can experience at any time. Now, granted, if you are lost in thought and you have not explored the inner landscape, it's not going to feel like that. It is going to feel like, as much as you want to experience love, peace, joy, that they simply are not accessible to you. And I understand that. So that is one stage or phase of a spiritual journey that most people go through. They go through a period, usually toward the beginning, where they just feel completely cut off. Interestingly, this can happen in a dark night of the soul, which in my experience can happen later on as well. So we might start our journey that way and then feel like, okay, I've got it figured out. I'm experiencing consistent peace, love, and joy in my life. And then we have a dark night of the soul, okay? And then with that dark night of the soul, we find ourselves, well, what happened to the peace, love, and joy that I was experiencing? So again, I've talked a lot about that at length last year because I was going through one. So you can go back and look at those videos if you're curious about that. I tried to share as much as I could about that experience. But in general, what you experience once you first, the way I describe the path these days is waking up and then cleaning up. And as we clean up our psychological mess, if you will, we begin to experience longer and more peace, love, and joy just in our day-to-day life. That's generally what happens. There can be moments where we don't. There can be, again, dark nights, but in general, those will be the exception rather than the rule. Whereas it seems to me, talking with most people, average people, people who don't have a sort of spiritual mooring in their lives, and I don't mean religious, I mean spiritual. For me, these two are different. But people who don't have a kind of spiritual mooring in their life, they very often will experience a lot of suffering. And sometimes they don't even know that that's what they're experiencing. If you ask them, they might be like, oh yeah, things are okay, yeah, I'm fine. But then you might find that they're doing certain things in their lives, like they drink way too much, or they're on a lot of mood-altering medications, or perhaps they are have really, really troubled relationships in their lives. So if you look under the hood, you might find that actually there's quite a bit of suffering there. Now, it's not really that interested in, judging other people or anything like that. I really highly recommend you focus on yourself and your own journey, your own joy, peace, love. So again, the question we want to ask ourselves from time to time is, are we having fun yet? And that might seem like a very frivolous measure of the spiritual path. Many people want spirituality to be very solemn and dark and require a lot of suffering. In my experience, that isn't really necessary or what it is about. It is about being able to live a human life fully and completely. And we have an aspect of ourselves that is spiritual. That's why spirituality is necessary for us to really access that and get the most out of that. So if the answer to are we having fun yet is no, again, some people will try and say no, but I just need to graduate college. No, but I need whatever. So again, I'm going to call those people out and say that that isn't really the answer. Again, it's not to say that you don't have something really challenging going on that might make your life easier when it's resolved. But in my experience, ease doesn't lead to peace, joy, and love. A lot of times, ease can actually lead to quite a bit of suffering. When we have nothing to do, we're on easy street, a lot of times this is when people can get into things like drugs and alcohol abuse and go off the rails, maybe eating too much, all kinds of problems. So in my experience, and I believe the scientific data backs this up, the answer to happiness is not more stuff, it's not more time, it's not having it easy, anything like that, okay? So again, the mind is a tool and we want to use it in the right way. So it may tell us that, right? The mind might say, oh yeah, once you graduate college and you're making your own money and you have this and that, then you will be happy. Once the kids grow up and leave the house and they're in college and they're all married, then I'll be happy, then I can relax, then whatever. Again, you want to be on the lookout if you're serious about this path for that future orientation. I will be happy when. I will be happy if. Okay, so again, what I teach is you can be happy right here and right now. In fact, that's the only time that you can be happy. What you're calling the future is just now. When it comes, it will be now. Okay, and usually if we put off happiness, if we're in that habit, if we believe the idea that I need things to orient in a certain fashion for me to experience peace or joy or happiness, then I'm not understanding reality. And when things happen to align just the right way, yes, my ego will relax for a moment, but it will very quickly go back to needing something in the future. And this is a large part of the inspiration for today's talk. The mind is a problem-solving machine. And what I think is happening to many modern people like you and I is that machine has run amok. We don't have that many real problems. We're going to be fed. We're going to be sheltered. We're probably going to live a relatively long amount of time. The real problems that we have are few and far between. And so I would argue that in my experience, what I see is when the mind, if we don't have awareness about the mind, in other words, if we have not practiced mindfulness, if we're not watching the mind, if we don't understand how the mind works and what thought is for, then we tend to let the mind tell us what we should be doing or what's going to bring us happiness or what's going to bring us joy. We tend to believe the mind, okay? So this is abusing the tool from my perspective. Now we're trying to find happiness out there by arranging things in a certain way because that's what the mind is good at. Additionally, when the mind does not have real, quote unquote, real problems to solve, then it makes problems, okay? It will create problems. So again, for many of our ancestors, the big problem they were trying to solve is how do I get enough calories to survive another day, okay? Might be something like that. How do I find shelter to survive this storm? Lots of things like that. How do I escape this dangerous situation with a bear or some other deadly animal, okay, or maybe another tribe. A lot of life and death, like really serious situations going on. For a lot of us, we feel a lot of angst and anger and frustration about politics, about world affairs, about rights of different groups. And I'm not saying that you can't feel passionate about that and also feel peace or joy. But in my experience, there tends to be a different quality to it than what I see a lot of people going through. What I see, and again, I could be wrong, but what I see is a lot of people are, again, they're using the mind in the wrong way. They're listening to the mind. They don't know their peace. They don't know their joy. They don't know the love that's coming from within them. And so they're trying to arrange the world in a way that they feel peace, love, joy, contentment, satisfaction. And in my experience, you can't. That's not the nature of the physical reality. That's not really what it's for. It's not its job. I'd say almost the opposite, that physical reality is probably designed to challenge us. I think that's a lot of what makes this experience of being a human being very interesting for a spirit or a soul or a divine being, okay? So I don't really think, the mind, again, is helping us navigate all this. That's fine. That is not a problem. But if we're looking to the mind or to the ego to say, okay, well, how do I become happy? How do I find joy? How do I find peace? In my experience, it doesn't come. The mind will not produce answers that are effective. It will give you an answer, it will, but that answer will not actually work. It will not actually scratch the itch, if you will. And again, what you'll find if you're paying attention is you might have a moment or two, a short flash of satisfaction. Now again, when I say that, it may just be a moment. It might be a day, it might be a week, it might be a month, it might even be a year or two. But what you'll find is whatever that thing is, oh, I'm finally married. I've been dreaming of getting married. I'm complete. You won't stay that way. I promise you. If you use the mind to generate that, then the mind, because it is a problem-solving machine, if there is not a problem now to solve, it will start looking for another problem to solve, because that's what it is designed to do. So it's a little bit like having, I don't know, a chainsaw or a lawnmower that's just running and going amok, and you've lost control of it, and it's just cutting things up and doing damage. Can a chainsaw or a lawnmower be used constructively? Absolutely. No one would question that. Absolutely it can. But can these tools be used in a way that's dangerous? Yes. And again, from my perspective, where I sit, what I see is most of modern humanity, meaning people who live like us, who are raised in a sort of Western culture, we are using the mind incorrectly. We're using the tool incorrectly. So how do we get a handle on it? Well, I would say start practicing mindfulness. There are many ways to do that. I'm not going to prescribe anything in particular. I will say meditation is a great way to get into that. Yoga, if you do it with the right instruction, the right person, that can help get you in the door. I know some people, at least initially, have trouble being still and meditating. That's something I've talked about in the past. That really shouldn't be a deterrent, but I get it. You may not want to start there. Another practice you can start doing is yoga nidra. And so these mindfulness practices do a couple things for us. One, they allow us to start seeing thought and the mind at work and disidentifying with it, creating some distance. because most people, before they do any kind of mindfulness practice, they think they are their thoughts. They think, that's my thought, that's my belief, that's my anger. They identify with the thoughts and the emotions so completely, they actually think it's them, and they suffer as a result. With mindfulness, you can begin to create space where you realize, just because I'm angry, it doesn't mean I should be angry. It also doesn't mean I'm right. Just because I have a thought about something or an opinion about something, that does not mean that my opinion is correct, okay? So this is huge for a lot of people. Maybe you already know that, but there are a lot of people who go around not really realizing that, not being willing to admit that. So that happens. And then another thing that can happen is you begin finding peace, love, joy inside of yourself, which is where the only place you really can find it. It doesn't exist out there. In fact, ultimately, in non-dual teaching, there is no out there. Everything is contained within the self, the true self. And so if we're going to find these things, the only place we can find it is within ourselves, because that's all that really exists. The only time we can find it is now, because that is the only time that actually exists. Okay? So as always, everyone, I hope this was helpful. Reach out with any questions. I'd love to hear from you, your experience with observing your thoughts, observing the mind, observing these patterns. Please share them in the comments below. Again, you can help me by becoming a patron on Patreon, but also by liking, subscribing, commenting, and sharing this video with those who you think can get something from it. Until next time, everybody, thanks again, namaste, and have a beautiful, beautiful day.